Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. Today is really special. Number one, because I'm wearing pasties. And number two, because I have Lana Violette on. Lana is a lot of things. I'm going to get out my sheet just because I want to make sure I cover all of them. She is the co-producer of Radiant Rubenesque Productions, which is a troupe of burlesque ladies. She's also a burlesque performer. She's the owner of Ooh La La Pasties. I want to make sure you guys can see these adorable pasties that she handcrafted for me. She's a wife. She's a dog mom. She's a classically trained opera singer, which is going to come up in a few minutes as she talks about weaving that into her burlesque. So, Lana, welcome. Thank you for being on the podcast today.
Bonjour. Thank you. Well, I'm so excited.
Will you tell us about you and how in the world you got into burlesque? And let's just go from there. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like short story long. It's been like a weird trajectory in my life where I didn't realize that burlesque was sort of like following me. Like I've always been interested in like glam. Like I would light up when I was a kid when I'd see Miss Piggy, when I'd see any sort of like showgirl, feathers, rhinestones. Like I was having a conversation with my older sister the other day, and she's like, "Yeah, it weirdly makes sense. Like you've always been like this pizzazz child, you know." And so I took more of a conventional route. I went to school um, for vocal performance and studied opera and got most of my bachelor's in that. Um, and then I just sort of floundered for a little while performance wise. I have a self deprecating joke that I'm trying to weed out because I'm like, it's probably not the most comfortable thing, but I used to joke that I'm a community theater reject. Like auditions just never came naturally for me. And then one day, a friend sent me. I was working at Crystal Bridges at the time, and a good friend of mine that worked there with me, she sent me a link, and it had a flyer for a burlesque workshop. And I was like, like all these memories flooded back. I worked at a craft store for a long time, and someone came through and they were buying rhinestones and feather boas and all this stuff. And I was like, what are you making? And they were like, oh, I'm doing a burlesque performance. And I was like, that happens in Arkansas? Like I was just so shocked and excited and peppered them with questions and freaked them out. And so, a few years later when this workshop came around, I was like, yes, I'm in, I'm doing it. Like, let's go. Will you go with me? And so we went down to Fort Smith, and Pepper Darling, who is out of Hot Springs, she's the stagehand for Foul Play Cabaret and is also a burlesque performer herself. She led the workshop, and it was just a basic 101, like, this is what burlesque is, this is how you do it. And then the troupe that hosted Pepper to lead the workshop, they were new, like they were just like, oh, and we're holding auditions. So there were some fits and starts, and they were from the ground up. So like, I think it was almost like 6 months later, or like it felt like a long time in between before I actually like auditioned and had a reason to make an act and actually perform and all of that. And Thanksgiving was my first show 6 years ago. So my anniversary is coming up here in a minute. So
happy anniversary.
Thank you. But what lit me up so much about it was that it's an avenue to do whatever kind of creativity you want to performance wise, and also sort of incorporate this sensuality tease, And so for me, the lowest hanging fruit from me having, studied music, I was like, opera, that's what's happening. Like, I'm going to do striptease opera. So that's how it started. Like, I have a few acts that are operatic, and then I always sing. It's for me, it's an avenue to be able to have that outlet where I wasn't winning auditions in the conventional way, and I wasn't, like taking the traditional route. So I was like, okay, well, if I could show my tits for you to hear my voice, that's what's happening.
Which I'm assuming at some point led into pasties and like handcrafting these really beautiful bedazzled pasties.
Thank you. Yes. So just along the way, I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago, I just like as merch, like I had taken some workshops with other performers, like just like most arts are. You really have to juggle a lot of balls and spin a lot of plates to sort of like make a bit of a living from it. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna optimize like my merchandise, like as well as like stickers and buttons. I'm gonna just have some like simple pasties, you know. So I started just making a few, and then I got more creative with it because I also have somewhat of a visual arts background. I like was kind of an isolated child growing up. I collaged all the time. Like I just always have had like 2D design.
Mhm.
So rhinestones sort of came naturally. Like I started making shapes. I started, you know, doing a lot of detail and shading because it's just doing little, I guess I'm a glutton for tedium. I just really love the tiny like shading and detail and stuff like that. So it's become a bit more where now what sustains me is a lot of custom orders from performers. And then I do ready-made designs that I sell at shows that I go to.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's been like, I think the first time I sort of like realized that it was a little bit of an enterprise was when I performed with Moonlight Minx in Tulsa like 3 or 4 years ago. And my husband came with me, Lord Violette. Um, and he decided to just kind of help me out, and he got really excited about me raking in money, and he's like, go baby go, like sell these, like let's do this. So you know, it's not a full-time venture for me just yet, but it's getting to a point where I'm like, okay, maybe I can like downgrade to part-time soon. Like this is cool. I'm sort of building momentum on making a living from art. So it's been a good way to sustain what I love to do on stage.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which segues into how I know you. So,
Yeah.
my partner and some friends and I went out to a burlesque show a few weeks ago, and Lana was one of the performers. For us, she was like the main performer because she comes out singing opera and this like super amazing costumes. And you're just like kind of magnetized to her in a way that you're like, what is happening? And I really like it, but this is strange and cool all at the same time. And I want more of it. And then she came out 2 or 3 times. And so we were all really excited when she would come out. And it's always fun to go to burlesque because every dancer, performer, I guess you call them a performer, has a very unique way of presenting like their unique style of dance.
Mhm.
And even like down to like kind of the striptease part. And I
Yeah.
was trying to explain to somebody the other day what burlesque was. I'm like, it's kind of like strip club, but way classier with like art mixed in. And I don't know how else to describe it. Can you please eloquently describe like what the heck is burlesque for people that have only been to a strip club or seen a strip club on TV and they don't
Yeah.
quite understand what's happening?
I mean, oh gosh, eloquently. This is the number one question I get,
Yeah.
and I'm always taken aback by it every time because to me it's so ubiquitous. It's yeah. So the way that I sort of like have been shortening it now is it's performance stripping that someone would feel comfortable bringing their girlfriend to, like in like a heteronormative relationship or whatever, you know, like um you know, that's sort of the shortcut for it, but that definitely does not encapsulate what burlesque is. It's almost like at this point it's almost asking like someone, can you explain music to me? There's so many facets, there's so many definitions of it. You know, a lot of people think uh you know, I think a lot of performers, their snap response is, well, it's not Christina Aguilera. You know, the movie, you know, like it's
Yeah.
not quite like that, but at the same time I'm like, yeah, but that movie was inspired by facets of it. um Really, like if you want to get into like the existence of it, like historically, it's always been a protest art form against censorship, against societal norms. That's why it's such a great avenue for people to explore gender and sexuality and racism and, you know, marginalized people. And there's such a root of it also being a voice for marginalized and especially um, Black and brown people, for them to be able to express, you know, just being free, just having freedom and not having shackles on them as far as like society and censorship and all of that. So like the more I've done it, the more I've like tapped into, I mean, I hate to say political and have it misconstrued as, you know, one way or the other. It's just more like political as in naked women's and femme, like in general, bodies are policed and told that we can't bear a part of our body that everybody else has, you know, like it's just this strange thing, you know. It's a farce, like in its truest form. It's a farce of saying, why do you tell me what I can and cannot do, you know? So one of my favorite burlesque performances, MC situations that I've seen recently, was with Bombay Cabaret. They're out of Central Arkansas, and they do a midnight noir show, and they've brought it to Fayetteville at Smoke and Barrel a couple times. Ooh. And their MC, Mickey Gaynor, I'm not even going to try to do it justice, but if you have a chance to go see one of their shows, she very amazingly explains in a way that just oozes with just, I don't know, it's just amazing. She just talks about burlesque in a way that's just, it brings it to the forefront of like, how dare you tell me how sexy I can be? You know, how dare you tell me what I can and cannot show? But at the same time, we follow these constrictures where we do, you know, like unlike a strip club, we don't show everything. You know, it's a tease. Like that's the core of it as well. So so yeah, I'm a little long-winded about what burlesque.
No, that's perfect. Is burlesque the same as cabaret, or is that different?
So there's like a Venn diagram that overlaps with club stripping, you know, like where club stripping, cabaret, and burlesque. As in,
what about drag show? Is that also in the Venn diagram at all?
Yeah, I mean, there's more of like a hand holding with drag and burlesque.
Okay.
But yeah, they all have an overlap. You know, drag is, you know, there's a debate right now about if drag is all ages appropriate, and it, in most cases, yes. You know, burlesque firmly is not, especially in the state of Arkansas. Which when I dropped off the pasties to you, I started like rambling, and I was like, yeah, this is how it works in Arkansas. It's kind of, can I say shitty? Like,
feel free to explain, because a lot of us don't know. We want to understand and we want to support you.
Yeah, Arkansas sees firmly burlesque and club stripping as exactly the same. So what that means is there are outdated laws that dictate that there are certain items of clothing that we can't remove unless we're in a designated stage area, or it could, this I always almost laugh, incur a prostitution or solicitation charge. We can't walk barefoot amongst audience members. Same thing. It could incur a prostitution charge. So, and it has implications for business owners as well. Like venue owners don't like to take the risk because strip clubs as well as burlesque require a cabaret license. Okay. So that's a specific licensing that they have to have in order to host the kind of entertainment that we do.
Okay.
So that's you know, that's what we're up against. Like that's what the art form has to push against all the time, but also sort of like toe the line of, so that we can continue practicing it.
Yeah.
So there are loopholes that we like work around. Like at Mermaids, I don't believe they have a cabaret license, but they are a private event space.
Right.
And so that's where, you know, places like that come in handy, because we can kind of do a lot of what we want in places that we rent ourselves. We're not under any sort of like jurisdiction of the ABC, which is so weird to me that it's tied in with our liquor laws. Like it really is like we're stuck into 100 years ago. Like it's 1920. These are where these like dates from. So if you want to see more sparkly titties, vote the people out who like keep these weird old laws in. You know, it's just like old establishment. It's really strange. So yeah, we Radiant Rubenesque and we try to like hunt spaces that work with what we can do, and also have a dressing room. That's like that's a huge deal. So yeah.
Okay, so let's say now that people understand more about what burlesque is, let's say that people decide they want to go see a burlesque performance. Where do you find those? How do you get to one? Like, where would you go look?
Right. A great resource is my partner, my business partner, the Siam Fox. She always posts on she has Stay Foxy Productions. And she does this really amazing thing for the community where she will do a roundup once a month where she will list out each burlesque performance, even if she's not affiliated with it. Like she'll highlight in red the ones that she's performing in, but the other ones are all the people doing all the things in our performance community. Most of it is in Central Arkansas. We're really trying to build more momentum here in Northwest Arkansas, and we had a lot of luck in the last year. Like we're so excited about, it was from June to October that we had like 4 shows from that time period. But our first like show as a production was at holidays last year. So it's been almost a full year that we've been like doing it. But I have a little bit more like, when I first started producing, I was like, oh, okay, we'll just do like a show a month. Like, and that's not realistic with everybody's schedule. I'll kind of backtrack with Radiant Rubenesque, and specifically it's me, Opal Sassafras, and the Siam Fox. We're the core producers. We call ourselves more of a production team than a troupe, because we don't have a set cast. We use the resources that we have with the surrounding areas to have a lot of guest performers who have been in the business for years, and people that we've worked with in a troupe that we formerly were in, that we were like, we want to work with you again, so and then we also put calls out for submissions for a lot of our shows. We put out a Google Doc for people to apply when we do have a production that's coming up. So yeah, we pull from a lot of different resources, and there's a lot of hidden talent in Arkansas that like, I feel like we're the best kept secret, like not Radiant Rubenesque, but like just burlesque in general. Because until I started performing burlesque, I did not realize the wealth of talent that we had. There's one of my favorite colleagues that I've worked with in the past several times is Raven Rose. She came from Hot Springs, and she's now moved to Tulsa, which is closer to Fayetteville. So that's, pretty cool.
Good for you.
But yeah, but yeah, she is like she's, that she uses that like classic, that sort of like the big boa and like the classic burlesque with like live music. And she does a lot of things in Dallas or Houston. I'm sorry, it's escaping me. But she travels all over. She does Texas and Missouri, and that is like the ones who sort of travel a little bit. We end up in like Texas, Missouri, Oklahoma. So yeah, sorry, I'm all over the place. Okay. But yeah, we have so many performers in Arkansas. There's even new ones being turned out, like Vesper's Cocktail Hour in Hot Springs does like, like newer reviews with newer performers. And
there's a lot going on in Hot Springs. I'm from Hot Springs, and so is my partner Scott. So we're always like, what is happening? And then you said the Poets Loft has some sort of like, not naked reading, but
so that's Fair Book Club. That is actually an international with Michelle Lemore. She's out of LA, but the Siam Fox is the Arkansas ambassador for Bear Book Club. So that is her baby. Like she's the producer. She runs that show, and she's with their corporation. And so Siam Fox is her. Sorry, I keep bringing her name up. She is a one-woman empire. I had mentioned Stay Foxy. She does Bear Book Club. She does Forbidden Arts Review, which is more festival geared, and aerial and fire fire arts, excuse me.
Wow.
Yeah, she's got her hand in a lot of pots. So we felt the core group started with Opal and I. It was just us two for that first show at Holidays. And we just always gravitated towards working with the Siam Fox. She's calm backstage. You know, she's a presence that you want to be around, you know, like professionally, you're just like, we've got this. Like, Fox is here, whatever help we need is covered. You know, like, and so after we did the Christmas show and we evaluated, okay, what do we want to do in the new year? What are things looking like? And we were just like, we just always want to work with Fox. Like we like, she is sort of adopted as a performer, like she's already in it, you know, if she needs to sit one out, we understand that, but like, we want to work with her. And so it just sort of organically happened where it was kind of like, so would you like to help us produce? Like, so she's so like, she's the glue that like keeps everything together as well. Like, it's great to have her on our team. Opal Sassafras and I work really well together. We sort of like left a former troupe and broke out on our own. And so we approached it with wanting to open Burlesque up for all of the like kaleidoscope that it is. I think Arkansas is really good about a representation of different bodies, I would say. Like I know, like, and other communities are good about it too. Like, I don't pretend to like know everybody and everything going on, but like, we wanted to highlight that. And so all of our stages have just variety of what beauty is, of what sexuality is, of what gender is, you know, like we want, you know, like, if like, definitely we want to highlight like all of the Black and BIPOC performers in our community, because we have a wealth of those. Arkansas Shake Shakers was started by Maxie Fauna, and they are an all Black burlesque troupe. And they are amazing. So I'm like throwing out a lot of names, but
that's okay. I'm taking notes because I feel like I can go back and you can help me find links for all of them.
Yeah,
and then people can go follow them. It feels like there also needs to be a burlesque Facebook group. It's just like a big group where you guys can go in there and say like, hey, here's what's going on this weekend. Like, here's a roundup, right?
Yeah, we do. I mean, I think it's more private to the performance community, but we definitely sort of communicate about and again, invoking the name of Fox. Like, she's really good about going into our Arkansas Burlesque group and saying like, what's everybody got going on? And then like I said, that post is such a great resource because she will list out everything once a month that says like what's going on with each performance.
Just to take this into like, so the swinging community does this. We have a big 2,000 groups of swingers in the region. And it's, of course, hosted by someone. It's actually a couple. And I had him on my last podcast, Justin and Kaylee. But they're constantly creating events. And then they're also like linking into other events that are already happening, or they'll do takeover events. So it sounds and then of course, like we're in there like, okay, tell us what to do. Where do we go next? So it seems very similar. And it seems like a lot of crossover too, that this swinger group, right, of all the open lifestyle people in the region, because it's region states as well, would also have a lot of crossover with your productions and all the juicy fun stuff that you guys are doing.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I think what I love so much about the burlesque community is that like I'm like sort of vanilla monogamous, but I have been blessed with being in contact with so many people who live lifestyles that don't look like mine. Yeah. You know, and burlesque, you know, like it obviously attracts like
it's open, it's inclusive.
Yeah, it's people absolutely. Who are not like interested in just the norm, you know, like so there's a lot of non-monogamous people in the burlesque community, and and queer people, of course. Like, it's just been like I said, just like a kaleidoscope. Like, I always feel so
I love
blessed
that.
because I grew up really sheltered, and I didn't have a lot I just lived in like a small town. I didn't have a lot of exposure to people who didn't look and act like me, you know?
Mhm.
And so to just and also a lot of repression, you know, like a lot of like that idea that people who are different of me are something to be feared. So it's opened up my life and my
Mhm.
heart to just be able to be like, nobody around me is burning. Like, everyone is fine. You know, like, people can
Totally.
make their own decisions and it doesn't have to fit into a box. So that's very freeing about burlesque, like in the burlesque community.
One thing I've been thinking a lot about with burlesque, well, let me start. I'm going to take a step back. I went to this retreat called the Abundant Sisterhood Retreat. It's
Mhm.
for our region, and it was based in like right north of Branson. So we were in the woods. There were 111 women. We were mostly naked the entire weekend. It was so freeing. It was very spiritual. It was, oh, amazing. And so out of that, I met a bunch of people. And locally, there is a pole yoga, not yoga, pole dancing. It is pole
Uh-huh.
dancing. There's a pole dancing group where a lot of these women were going, and they were older women, like 50s and 60s, like reinventing themselves and finding their sexuality later in life and really digging deep into that. And I imagine this group of these women who we watched pole dance for us out in the woods. And I was just like, what is happening? This is amazing. I want to be them when I grow up. I can imagine also finding things like this where you plug into a troupe, or you start to learn burlesque, or you start to become embodied and like dig into your sexuality.
Mhm.
As I mean, like, we're not 20, like
Right.
we're in our 30s, we're in our 40s, we're entering this really neat stage of life where we get to be embodied, and we get to learn
Yeah.
ourselves, and we get to show our own sexuality in a way that is freeing and unique and really beautiful. So I'd love to hear your thoughts too on how burlesque encourages embodiment, learning your sexuality, and showing it in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, when I started burlesque, um, I had this stupid waist trainer that I bought. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. Didn't know what I was doing. You know, like, we don't have like conventional methods like in bigger cities where you have classes and stuff. Like, we don't have a hub for that.
Mhm.
So a lot of that was just like contacting other performers and joining like Facebook costuming groups and being like, what the heck? So a lot of this has been trial and error. But when I first started, I wore this like waist trainer. I was like, I'm not taking it off. Like, my whole thing is that, you know, like, I'm just like, I had our society had baked so hard into me, as it does to so many women and femme presenting bodies, about our core and our center and how it should look a certain way.
Yeah.
um and I wanted to hide that. I didn't, you know, I wanted to make sure that the worst quote unquote part of me was hidden. um and burlesque has really changed my views on um what I think society tells us all the time is an acceptable body just to inhabit, let alone find sexy. Um, you know, and so that's where it like rolls back around to like a protest art form, because for me, I grew up just like uh not ever feeling at home in my body because I was always told it was too this or too that.
Mhm.
And so I think with burlesque, it's such a reclamation, because as I kept doing it, I was like, why am I wearing this dumb Velcro like waist trainer I found at like Walgreens.com or something? Like, I don't even remember. Like, it was so dumb. It wasn't even pretty. Like, it wasn't like a pretty corset. It wasn't highlighting anything. It was just hiding.
Mhm.
And as I continued to do it, just hiding things became irrelevant. You know, I philosophically, I'm just like, I approach things a lot more now with like an anthropological worldview.
Mhm.
When we talk about like the body positive movement and how empowering it is, you know, I'm just like, we're all in the same boat. Like, we all have
Yes.
bodies and we all have death looming over us. If you want to get like existential about it, like, things will fail. Things will look different over the years. People will have children. People will have cortisol levels that they can't control. People will have illness where they can't work out. Like, why was I told, just like explicitly or implicitly, like through culture that I was exposed to, why was the message that I need to look a certain way, that someone is paid for their lifestyle to look that way, just so I can buy into the narrative that I have to look like that. So yeah, burlesque has been very empowering in that regard. Like I've just learned, like, looking at the audience, like, you can have dimples and freckles and rolls and bumps, and they don't give a fuck. Like,
No.
humans love flesh. We love it. Like, we're lustful creatures, most of us, like, I'm not saying like asexuals don't exist. I don't want to erase anybody, but at the same time, like, I think just the majority, like, core of most of humanity is just like, yes. Mm-hmm. And even like asexual people or people who are not as into sex, they love looking at the beauty of the human form, mm-hmm. and seeing what it can do, and seeing how it can be decorated, and seeing how it can express itself, like, yeah, it's just been so eye-opening seeing so many different types of bodies on stage and being like, yeah, okay, well, I was told I was this, that, or the other, or I was told I was too fat to do this. I'm so like, I have two sisters. One is like a great supporter and very close to me, and we're on the same wavelength. And the other one is someone I don't share a lot about my life with. And she made a comment the other day that sort of just like, it just spoke to how my worldview has changed so much about bodies and about inhabiting a human body and the things that we say and how we view things. Like, she was talking about her back hurting, and she was like, well, it probably doesn't help that I'm fat. And I'm just like, skinny people have back problems too. Like, I can't do this anymore. I can't sit here and I, like, I don't want to shit on my family, but I'm like, I had a thin mother and I was an alien to her because I was a curvier child. And I think it scared her, and that fat phobia that we have as a society just like affects so many people. Like, even a thin mother looking at her child and being like, I'm afraid of this child getting fat. Like, that's toxic and destructive. So I like, when I heard my sister say that, I was just like, I'm so thankful I'm not trapped in that. I'm not trapped there anymore. And that's like, I can't thank burlesque enough for just me to have the ability to say, too fat for what? Yeah. Why am I going to let what my body looks like dictate what I can and cannot do with it? Plain and simple. Like, so yeah, like, sorry, I just got very animated, but yes, it's been very empowering. Like, burlesque has been an avenue to reclaim so much, specific, like, I keep talking about like body positivity and stuff like that, but sexuality as well. Like, sensuality, especially being able to express myself in a way that, like, I'm pretty private, like, I don't talk a lot about like my personal sex life that often, but it's exciting for me to have like an outlet where you just feel like the most sexual person in the world. Like, you're the most desired. Everybody wants to feel that way. Like, we all want to be the most desired, whether if it's by a room of people or just one person. I have just always happened to, like, I'm proud, like, what I always say is like, what's that phrase? Sorry, never mind. I'll circle back to it. But like, I'm not someone who is like pursuing a lot of different people. I'm very content with my husband, but there is like an ego, what have you, that runs wild.
Oh, yeah, we all feel that.
Right, exactly. Everyone. It doesn't matter where on the spectrum of, like, how much sex you're having or whatever, with how many people there's something so satisfying about
being wanted.
Yeah. So like, burlesque is exciting because I think you know, just like my jazz hands personality, like not having, just like being rejected left and right with like conventional auditions and things like that, and just being told no, like when it came to operatic and classical singing, like I just had academics who were just like, maybe you should try something else, or, you know, and I'm just like, no, I get to say that I'm Lana Violette and I sing opera, and I do it with sparkly things. And because I think when I was pursuing my education and I was doing all these recitals, you know, there were people I could tell like I was a little different. I could just tell like they were in it for the music, you know, and I was like, I'm in it for the dresses, you know?
And
Like
the
like,
rhinestones.
yeah, like I love the music as well, but I really didn't blossom with like, honestly, like educationally, I think I connected more with what I was being taught once I was out of it. Like once I was out of an academic environment, I was just like, oh shit, like this all turns me on. Like all of this opera stuff is amazing. Like I was too scared and anxious because I was always trying to people please with like these people who are higher up than me. But um, you know, that's one reason why I love to bring opera into my performances, is because um it's like a, I love bringing it into nightlife spaces. Like it's
Mhm.
unexpected, and it also
Mhm.
just lights people up. They're just like you said, I loved your reaction when you were like, what is happening? Because like the element of surprise is a lot of times what's the funnest part for me. Is, you know, there for a while I didn't even advertise myself as an operatic performer. Um, but I've been doing it long enough. I'm like, no, I need to like capitalize on it more. But when
Mhm.
I was first starting out, no one knew what the heck, you know, who I was or anything. Like that element of surprise and just being like, you know, don't tell them. And my first act was like with this sort of like janky YouTube like piano that I had just like pulled from the internet of someone like literally just doing like a study of the piece. And so you just hear like this, you know, like where are we, in a saloon? And then all of a sudden I like open my mouth, and it's exciting. It's exciting to hear like the gasp and hear people go. And Opal Sassafras backstage, who you saw as the MC at one of our shows, she's
Yeah.
so good, and she loves to bring everybody in, and everybody feels like her best friend by the end of the show. That's just her. She's very genuine. But backstage, I'll sometimes say like, man, that crowd was hard, or like that audience was like a little quiet. I wanted them to get into it, and she was like, it's difficult with you. Like she always reminds me. She's like, people want to hear you, and so I get these like little glimpses while I'm performing. Like I performed at Central Theater in Hot Springs back in October. Gosh, that was only a month ago. But I was there and I was doing my bride act, which you saw at Mermaids, and I just heard this woman, like this guy was like cheering or whatever, and I just heard her go shh. And I was like, that's what happens. It's like
Yeah.
this weird dichotomy where people really want to get into it, but they're like, oh, but we want to hear what's going on. So I always add into my intros, like, she'll make you want to scream, but stun you into silence. So I kind of, you just pivot. You just got to like figure out what works with your audience and everything. So
It's true. I love that you brought up the exhibitionism part, that you love to be seen.
yeah.
I do too, and I can completely understand that energy. And then there's also the voyeuristic side. So I think mostly in your audience, you're going to get a lot of voyeurs that just
Yes.
want to watch. We're very visual.
Right.
And so it's so much fun to watch all of the performances. So one question I had for you as well. So we talked about how you got into burlesque. We
Mhm.
talked about why you love burlesque. And we talked about how it empowers you, like, especially as a woman, or I would just say as a woman with, all of the societal pressure to be perfect and to have this flat stomach and to look like an Instagram model. What we haven't talked about is, what if you want to get into burlesque? Maybe you've been listening and you're like, this sounds really fun. And I'm at a point in my life where I want to work on embodiment. I want to work on my own sensuality. I've always loved to dance, or I've always loved to sing, or
Yeah.
I'm an exhibitionist and I'd love to have my body be looked at. How do you start? How does that work?
Oh my gosh, like when I was reading your like pre-questionnaire, I was like, what is burlesque and how do you get into it? Those are the two hardest questions to ask,
Yeah.
or to answer, excuse me. Uh, like my first thought was like, when you find out, let me know. Like, no, there are avenues. They're just
There's
like
troops, right? Can you not join a troop? I know there used to be a local troop. I don't know if there still is one.
it's so tricky because like there are and there aren't, like so like Bombay Cabaret I would say is a troupe, but they also rotate some of their performers. Arkansas Shakers as well, they are solely Black troops though. And then there is um True Grit and Grind in Fort Smith. But like everybody's so kind of established. What we really need, we have a market, it seems, with this question that I get all the time, for something that bigger cities have, which is like a school of burlesque.
Yeah.
Or yeah, like we do have a void of that. Most people, like, it is very like sort of like, because it's a protest art form, like in Arkansas especially, we're nitty gritty, like kind of punk, like we're all very self like brought up and just somehow there used to be an avenue called Spa City Sweetheart, like a way to get into burlesque called Spa City Sweethearts, and that was with Foul Play Cabaret in Hot Springs. And for 10 years that's sort of how our scene got built up, because they had a contracted gig that was a fundraising event for Valley of the Vapors, which you're probably more familiar with than I am, having been from Hot Springs. But they would raise money for that music festival with a charity show or fundraising show that just basically it was a call to anybody who wanted to try burlesque. Well, they're 10, they did that for a decade and then their contract ran out. So I think that's what we're seeing now, is sort of these performers that came out of that era, because that was such a way to be like, okay, go do Spa City Sweethearts, that's your kind of way to get in. So there have been like performers who have encouraged Radiant Rubenesque to do something similar. With just 1 year under our belt, I think we're still gaining a lot of our sea legs to figure out how to but I had mentioned Vesper's cocktail hour earlier. I know she is looking for performers, but that's if you just want to jump right in, like
sounds like we need someone to teach people how to do burlesque. There's a big need in Arkansas for that.
There is. I've thought about it. Like, it's weird because I feel like a niche within a niche, because I always sing and my acts are a little like, I mean, everybody's acts are different. Everybody's sort of like making up their own rules, right? But there's been, I guess it might be like some imposter syndrome, because I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I've been doing this for 6 years. Like, I know the industry a little bit. Like, I'm no authority, but I'm like, I could teach some basics. Like, I might be able to do a 101, excuse me. So, I mean, I don't know, like, this is kind of a light bulb moment for me. Maybe there's something in the future for me to get involved with. But yeah, I wish I had more resources.
I love it. We're going to do a podcast. It's like Burlesque Part 2, and contact us if you want to be part of the new troupe.
I'm into it. Yeah.
There's a Fayetteville troupe now.
Like I said, if there's a way for me to be able to knock down to like part-time, and I have more avenues where I'm just like side hustle after side hustle, I'm into it. But I mean, Radiant Rubenesque, we always, like I said, we typically put a call for submissions out to our shows. So if you have a creative idea, like if you're like, I find this really sexy and I'm gonna try to, or I find this really funny, like, that's the thing, like, burlesque doesn't have to fit into just like sexy, like it can be like, one of my favorite comedic burlesque performers is Cater Tot, that's with a K, like Kate Tot. They're out of, I want to say, Missouri, like Kansas City, gosh. But They do like a striptease to Wario, and one is like Uncle Fester. Is that the bald? Yeah. They do like these wacky performances that are confusing. Like they make jokes about it with their TikToks where they're like, most people think that when I do burlesque, it's this, and they'll show clips of like glamour and stuff, and then there is like a compilation of clips of like someone doing or like them doing ballet in a penis costume, like, and so that's, so like people can go wild. Like you just kind of make up your own rules. Like I fell into it because I was just like, I'm gonna sing opera. I'm gonna figure out a way to do that and incorporate a lot of rhinestones, so yeah, there's not right now, especially there's not a conventional route.
Got it.
But hopefully we get established enough that we can kind of build that. Like I'm excited about the progress that Radiant Rubenesque has made in Northwest Arkansas with, limited resources, because I should mention we also all work remotely because the Siam Fox is located in Little Rock. And Opal Sassafras is in an undisclosed location. She's a mother, so we don't like, she's close enough to Northwest Arkansas that the commute is worth it for her, and I'm really thankful for that. And so I really am the only Northwest Arkansas based performer proper that I know of, which I feel a little bit in the loop to think that if there were others, I would sort of know of them by now. There was Astra Lamore, but she recently enlisted in the Army, so she is remote. Like she'll be back, but at the moment she's away. So she got back into performing. Central Theater is a great place to find burlesque right now. I'll be there on the 25th.
Where's Central Theater?
It is off of Bathhouse Row in Hot Springs.
Okay, so back in Hot Springs.
It's Central Avenue.
Yeah,
so that makes sense.
Got it. So what about people listening that want to book you guys that are maybe in Northwest Arkansas, or maybe you're somewhere else in the state? It sounds like Hot Springs and Central Arkansas has a lot of burlesque going on, where ours is really developing, which is interesting because there's, lots of people that are very open and in the lifestyle up here that are in positions of authority that could book you for a fun holiday show. Yeah. So I'm curious, how do they book?
Well, if you want to book Radiant Rubenesque, you can email us at radrubenbabes@gmail.com.
Okay.
Or you can message us, like DM on Facebook. We have a Facebook page. Follow us, like us. We'll keep you up to date. Right now, we are on a little bit of a hiatus. I think until the new year, we're not going to be able to produce a show. However, Lana Violette, wide open. Like, if you need me for your Christmas party, I'm very hard pursuing New Year's. I'd love to ring in the new year doing what I love. So if anybody has like a saucy New Year's party that they need entertainment for, I'm available. And you can email me at lanasirenviolette @gmail.com. And then
we'll put all these email addresses in the show notes.
Thank you. And then the Siam Fox, I don't know. I think she's booked for until the rest of the year. She does the promotions for Central Theater as well. Like I'm telling you, she is a one-woman empire. Like she does it all. So I think she said like and she's also finishing business school. So I think we're laying low a little bit for the new year. But if you want to reach out to the Siam Fox to book her as well, I believe she's the.siam.fox@gmail.com. I would follow her socials first because I don't know. Like I don't know.
DMs are the easiest for sure.
Yes.
So anything that you want to end with? Any advice? Any thoughts? Anything to close out this podcast?
Oh my. Gosh, I don't know. Like that's so much pressure.
It's your opportunity. Anything we didn't cover.
Yeah, I wish I had worn pasties. I'm so used to ending with a reveal, but that's not appropriate, and you need to pay for it. You need to come see my shows. Um, well, I'll shamelessly plug myself again. You can see me next at November 25th at Central Theater in Hot Springs. It's a Black Friday market and show, so there'll be people modeling wares of great vendors and designers, Crystal Bijou and Maxi Fauna. They're the same person. She does a jewelry line, and then she'll be on stage as well. I'm not doing justice with, like, it's a star-studded event, like, so that's, oh, but this won't air until after November 25th. Dang it. Okay.
I can go ahead and make it live so that people can listen to it. We just won't promote it until December. And that's okay. Yeah.
I'm not, yeah, whatever. Okay. Ending the show.
You also make amazing pasties. So if anybody
yes,
wants to do your own private burlesque show for your partner at your
yes.
house or
yes,
your OnlyFans account or whatever.
Yeah, I haven't gotten into that type of content making just yet. I've thought about it on and off. It's not outside of the realm of possibility, but yes, Ooh La Lana Designs. That's my Insta. So it's like Ooh La La, but Ooh La Lana. So yeah, that's my pasties, and yeah, just keep sparkling.
I love it. Keep sparkling. Thank you for coming on. I know this is like a really interesting topic that we've never had before. And so my intent is really to bring new things to my audience that they've never heard that sparks interest and helps them grow. And this was really fun. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Bye.